Okay, so the class is being recorded as usual. Again, for perhaps recording purposes, my name again is Dr. Sameh, and this is Cézanne. Cézanne is a French painter. He was born in the 19th century, and he was a controversial figure. And this is perhaps the reason why we're featuring him in our book. Remember, the book is about contested reputations, and of course, Cézanne has his reputation challenged on a number of counts. Especially when it comes to art, when it comes to the paintings that he produced. Um, Cézanne was a point of departure and was, um, a point of departure perhaps from old traditional painting to new and modern painting. He reacted very aggressively to the paintings of the past. He didn't like how people used to paint, and he wanted to chart his own way, right? Spoke about him, spoke about the fact that he came from the south, where the villages are, and normally people who come from the south, they have their own refined sensibilities. They live close to nature. They live by perhaps the lakes um, you know, um, and they have in their background mountains and hills, and this would refine their sensibilities, and that would be, adding to their artistic sensibilities, if any. This applies to Cézanne very much. We spoke about the fact that if you're an artist or perhaps a literary figure, a painter or a poet or even a novelist, and you live in the countryside away from the limelight, the likelihood that you get recognized and your talents acknowledged would be very low because you live on the margin. We spoke about the margin and the center last time. You have to be in the city, you have to be in the capital and in a big city in order to get recognized and in order for your talent to be acknowledged. Typical of writers and painters who live in the south, he has to migrate to the center. He has to go to the center, and the center here happens to be Paris, the city of light or lights, and he is going to try his hand. So when he goes to the center, obviously they're not going to be waiting for him with open arms, right? They have their own way of doing things. He has to either follow what they do, or he gets, perhaps dismissed as being, unartistic or talentless. Okay, so when Cézanne goes to Paris, he went to Paris after a long-time friend encouraged him to do so. I mean, remember we spoke about Emile Zola, and we said that Emile Zola is a very famous French novelist, and the two of them happened to be friends. So Zola went perhaps a year or two earlier to Paris, and then Cézanne followed him. Okay, so again, when Cézanne goes to the center, to Paris, from the margins where he was born and raised, He, like I told you, he either follows the established models, or he wouldn't be recognized and acknowledged. So, from our experience, we found that Cézanne is or was not following the established guidelines. Those established guidelines were, for the most part, classical. He has to follow classical models. He has to follow the guidelines of the Salon, and the Salon is an art exhibition that takes place every year. So, in order for you as an artist to get recognized uh, um, and to have credit so that you can go on painting, you have to take your credential, sorry, cre- credentials from the salon. Okay, so you apply in order for your paintings to be admitted into the salon. Okay, they check your paintings and they check whether you are following the guidelines, you're following the rules and the regulations of the salon, which are inspired by the rules and regulations and the guidelines of the French Academy of Arts. If you're following them, they would admit you and you will be accepted. But if you're not following any of that, this is going to be a problem because when you walk out of the salon, nobody will accept your paintings. And if painting is your only source of income, so bad luck. You will perhaps perish, or you will perhaps die because you wouldn't have access to money because of the fact that you're not accepted into the SAP. Just to remember, Cézanne would try to have entry into the salon, but he wouldn't be admitted because of how different his style is. He is also a nonconformist in the sense that he wouldn't follow the rules. He would say that these rules are very stifling. Those rules are, they stand um, in the way of talent. You wouldn't be natural. You wouldn't be, you know, fulfilling your potential if you keep following these rigid guidelines. So it took him 19 years to finally be accepted into the salon. Again, does it mean that he didn't try many times? He did try, but every time he presents his work, they say, no, your work is not up to the standard. It's not up to our standards. You're not following our rules and our guidelines. Again, when will he be accepted? He will be accepted after 19 years, after the rules of engagement in the salon itself would change. And the change that took place is partly because of the revolution, the artistic revolution that Cézanne and his colleagues, the Impressionists, started. They started a revolution. They said, we wouldn't use the rigid guidelines the traditionalists are advising us to use. We have our own unique way of painting, and this unique way of painting should be given a chance. They insisted, like I said, Cézanne and a number of other painters created or formed what we now call the Impressionistic or the Impressionist school of painting, which shows disregard to the rigid guidelines of the Salon, which has its own way of doing stuff. Again, that would bring us to the idea of the conflict or the clash between traditionalists and modernists. So, who represent whom? So, obviously, traditionalists would be artists who follow the guidelines, the rigid guidelines of the Salon. They follow traditions, whether this is classical tradition going all the way back to classical Latin and Roman and even Greek models, or even the traditions of the early uh, uh, Italian Renaissance, where the focus was on perhaps portraying figures from the Bible and other sacred texts. So these are the traditionalists, and they are given expression in the Salon, in the people who are in charge of the Salon, in the rigid rules and regulations of the Salon. So on the other hand, you would have modernists, people like Cézanne and the other impressionists, who said that we have to chart our own way. We don't have to go all the way back to the past, to ancient, models, whether they are Greek or Roman, and have an inspiration from them. No, life as it is lived in the contemporary world would be the stuff of our work. We have enough life experiences from modern and contemporary life, and that would be inspiration enough. We don't have to go all the way back to the ancient models and even the early Renaissance Italian paintings, where again the focus was on religion, was on reproducing perhaps biblical figures. With Cézanne and his people, the moderns, there is also a shift away from figurative painting to paintings that is um, in the description of some people, violent, recapturing reality as it is, not as it should be. Um, okay. And so, do you guys have any questions? I've been talking for quite some time.
Yes,
Hello.
doctor. Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, go ahead. Ask.
Doctor, there is a lot of dates and years in the book. Are we required to memorize all of these dates and years that
No,
mentioned in the book?
no memorizing. Just understand. Just try to establish logical connections and relationships between and among the different parts of the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Be aware of the different comparisons that we're making between the different trends, the different schools, the different paintings, the different painters, and that would be it. You don't have to memorize dates or days. Okay,
Okay, thank you, doctor.
you're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
I have time for one more question before I go to the book. But if you guys have questions, you can always ask now, because once we start, I wouldn't allow any questions. Any questions? Any answers, type?
Doctor, I have a question.
Okay, what's your name?
Ghaida.
Layla.
Ghaida.
Ghaida.
I want to
Ghaida
ask
is the
about.
artist, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to ask about Emily Zola.
Yeah,
What is the relationship between this guy and between
Cézanne.
Cézanne?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they were close friends. They obviously hail from or come from the same part of the world. Both of them were from the south of France. I think they were the two of them were from the same province. They had this great relationship. Like I said, Emily Zola traveled to France earlier than Cézanne, and perhaps moved. Can you kindly mute your mic? Mute your mic. Badreya Bashir, Badreya, mute your mic.
أختك راحت طلعتك؟ لا لا مش هي خلاص.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, doctor. Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
doctor.
So again, like I was saying, both Emily Zola and Cézanne are close friends, and the two of them are from the south of France. And in order to make it big in the world of art, whether we're talking about literature in the case of Emily Zola, or painting in the case of Cézanne, they have to travel all the way to Paris, the center. uh,
Dr. Emile Zola is a writer, and Cézanne, he's a painter, right?
yes, right.
Yes.
Absolutely
Thank you,
right.
Doctor.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay. So let's now move all the way to the book and see how we're going to handle the rest on the book. Okay. Okay. Can you see that?
No.
No,
No.
Doctor.
No,
One
doctor.
sec.
Now yes. Now yes, we can see.
Yes,
Yes,
we
you can.
can
Yes.
now.
Yes. Now it works.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Okay. So again, this is Cézanne, and these are the items that some of them we have covered already, and we're moving to the rest of the items. Again, let me just put up this disclaimer. We're not here to perhaps teach you how to paint, because we're not painters ourselves. This is the English department where you learn to appreciate the arts. And of course, among the arts would be both literature and painting. So it's about developing appreciation, not teaching you, because we're not fine arts, right? We're not in a college or a faculty of fine arts. We're an English literature major, where the focus is on appreciation. Okay. Of course, you know what the aims were, right? The aims were more or less about introducing this aspect, this different aspect. We said that, in previous classes, we had literature. In the case of Christopher Marlowe, we had history in the case of Cleopatra, and this time around, we're having, arts or painting in the case of Paul Cézanne. Again, what connects the three would be the idea of reputation, the idea of disputed and challenged reputation. The reasons why people get popularized, whether positive or negative. Again, Cézanne or Paul Cézanne was a controversial figure, and controversial in the eyes of the traditionalists who believed that he wasn't very artistic. Again, why? Because of his different way of painting. He was not painting according to the established guidelines. Again, you cannot talk about an artist or a painter without getting to know something about, painting and the terminology of painting, how to perhaps look at a painting, how to look at its different details. This is coming in the chapter. Again, um, um, we're not perhaps giving you enough tools to be able to be art critics. This is not on our list of priorities. Being an art critic would require of us to teach you perhaps the anatomy of human beings, and if the paintings are portraits of people, you need to know about nature, you need to know about the different colors and their significance and all these kinds of things. So you will be appreciating art and painting to perhaps in the level where you can comfortably write about a painting, but not as an established critic, right? Okay. So remember Cézanne and the fact that he was born um, in in the south of France in 1839, and the fact that he died in 1906. Remember, we had this idea that one of his paintings was sold for 60.5 million dollars, and this is, of course, is very exaggerated. It's an exaggerated price, and we said that people or the one who has bought the painting was doing that not because of the intrinsic artistic value of the painting itself, but rather because of the name of Cézanne, the fact that Cézanne is now a very popular and a very famous artist. Um, Again, and this is also about fame and about being famous. If you're famous, if you become famous, sometimes if you even produce things of little value, people can go and buy them at a very high price. Again, this is one of the perhaps unexplainable things about being famous and being a celebrity. And this is happening even nowadays, for example, especially on YouTube and Instagram and all these other platforms, where the videos that people are perhaps presenting are not very high standard in terms of their value. But because of the fact these people are very established, people know about them, they have millions of subscribers and fans, they get even more popular with the videos that they produce. So again, this is perhaps one of the things that we need to reflect on: why people get famous, and when they get famous, what happens with their productions. Do they get better, or they get worse? And if they get worse, do their fan base becomes smaller? This is not what we see in the world today. Anyway, this is the as you can see, the painting that was bought for 60 million. As you can see, it's very simple. If you look at its value, you wouldn't say that it's very valuable. At least you can have better paintings. Again, it was bought for uh, um, for its author, because of the painter himself. Anyway, we said that he was born in the south, and the south happens to be where the villages and the countryside are, and these are the margins. And like I said last time, with margins, you don't get recognized, you don't have enough services, you're not, cared for or cared about by the central government. The focus is normally on big cities. Again, if you are talented, what is it that you're left with? You're left with the decision to leave perhaps your family behind and travel all the way to the center, the capital city, or one of the big cities, which what Cézanne exactly did. He did just that. Was he poor? No, he wasn't poor. He was, he came from a self-made family, and his father made it perhaps big in the business of hats, and he wanted him to study law. Which can you mute your mic? Somebody is having his mic on. Let me mute uh, Sarah. Sarah is muted. Alhamdulillah. Let's go back to the fact that his father was well off, and he wanted him to study law, which he did for 2 years. And then he decided to quit. He said that I'm not cut to be a lawyer. I want to be something else. What is this something else that he wanted to be? He wanted to be a painter. We spoke about the idea that he joined Emile Zola, his best friend in France, and sometimes he had bouts of disappointment. I mean, you don't get famous overnight, which is something that obviously Cézanne didn't realize. When he went to Paris, it wasn't long before he started to have those bouts of doubt about his abilities, about his talent. And it was Emily Zola who used to tell him, to reassure him, you have talent, and all you need to do is to work so that you can enhance your talent. By working here, Zola means to work on your talent. And how do you work on your talent? You need to develop techniques. You need to perhaps in the case of paintings, you would visit museums and go to art galleries and look at how people paint. You try to get inspired by them. You need to also become you are a born you are a born poet, which is fine, but you also need to work for it. You have the spark. Uh, um, all you need to do to succeed would be to exercise your fingers and become a worker. A worker means that you develop the needed techniques. Um, okay, this is obviously one of the things that we will find lacking with Cézanne. Cézanne for all his talent, for all his resourcefulness as a natural born painter, he was, poor when it comes to techniques. Was it something that he could work on? Absolutely. But he is rebellious by nature. He was not happy with the existing techniques of the time, and he said that those techniques would take away from whatever is spontaneous and whatever is natural about his paintings. That's why he was adamant about not acquiring the existing techniques of the time. So he has youthful ambition, which he found very uh, stifled by the rigors of academic training. He didn't want to train to become an artist in the traditional sense. So again, he would have authentic artistic temperament, but he would struggle with the problems of technique. And technique would be about practicing, about knowing how to mix colors, the different, I mean, measuring the different dimensions, perhaps studying human anatomy and all these kinds of things. These are things that he wasn't interested in. He was painting naturally, and obviously nature is important, but also nurture is as important. You have to have nature in you because you're born with it, but you also have to be nurtured. Nurtured means that you have to acquire, techniques um, and skills. And of course, you know the difference between talent and skills or skill. So talent is natural and you're born with it, while skill is something that you acquire through work and through training and everything. Again, like I said, when he went all the way to France, I'm sorry, well, it was French. When he went all the way to France, again France, Paris. I'm sorry. He would have to, you know, you know, to enter the competitions of the salon. Okay, that's good. In order for him to make it big, he has to go through this experience, which he did, but obviously he got rejected. I mean, perhaps he didn't know. He asked. He said, "Guys, why did you reject me?" They would tell him that you're not following the rules. We have rules and guidelines, and obviously, you're not following them. Well, come back next year. And then he tries again the following year, and he gets rejected. And then he starts to knock on the door. Why did you reject me? And they would give him the same answer. You're not following the established rules. Okay, so it took him, like I said, 19 years to get accepted. So does it mean that he followed the rules eventually? No, he didn't. Obviously, they have to kind of break and bend the rules so that he gets accepted, which means that the world has changed. Whatever was not accepted in the past got accepted. Why? Because of the artistic revolution that Cézanne and his colleagues started. After he got rejected, he met with a number of rejectees, if you like, and they were all rejectees, salon rejectees, and he said, why don't we write in our own terms and in our unique way and hope for the best? And they said, okay. And they made this group that we now call the Impressionists. At the core of Impressionism, or the Impressionistic school of painting, is this disregard for the rigid rules and guidelines of the salon. Do we know other people who were also part of this? Yes, we have a number of people. We have Pissarro, we have Renoir, we have Morisot, Alfred Sicily, and Edgar Degas. And of course Claude Monet. These are now very famous painters in their own right, but they were part of the group that that we now call Impressionism. And like I said, Impressionism in art, especially in France, came as a reaction to the rigid rules and the rigid guidelines of the Salon. Again, would that settle the differences? Would that be the end of it for Cézanne, and he would establish himself and become part of this group? No, he's going to, quickly leave them behind, because they started to have their own rules. And he is a free spirit. He doesn't want to stick to rules, to follow rules at any cost. So he would leave them behind and start his own, I wouldn't call it a school. He would again chart his own way and write and paint the way he sees fit. Again, this is an example. The House of the Hanged Man at Ouvre. This is one of his paintings, and this is rooted in the impressionistic, you know, kind of painting, where, as you can see, you don't have details. There is no details. I mean, this is an impression that they are having, and they are reproducing in a painting. You normally have far off places. Look at the people. I would like you to look at the people. Can you recognize the people? Can you tell me whether the people are men or women? Hello?
No,
No.
it is
No.
like
They are not recognizable. And this is meant, by the way, by the impressionists, because it's an impression that you're making or taking or recapturing. Okay, you don't have those heavy details that you normally have with traditional painters, where the focus is on you get to know about people and places. You would look at the picture and you can unpack it. You talk about people, you can perhaps easily classify them into male and female. You have how they look, and you have how they dress. So you don't have those details in a painting like this one. And again, this is because of the fact that this is a different type of painting. This is modern painting, where the focus is on the impression, getting the impression and then recapturing it in a painting. Again, we spoke about what Cézanne got at the beginning, or perhaps for a substantial part of his career. Sometimes you have people who are supporting him, and sometimes you have people who are in their criticism are very violent and very harsh. He would at one point be ridiculed and made fun of. We spoke about those two examples. where one of them is very scathing. Scathing criticism means that he was harshly criticized. Again, the reason was for not following the guidelines of the Cézanne. And then you have Georges Riveret, like we said, this guy compared Cézanne to classical painters, and he said he was, he was very talented and he was a great painter. Again, Riviere, when he spoke about him in those very good terms, he was referring to his body of work, which was made up of a great deal of bathers' paintings. The focus with Cézanne was on bathers at one point in his life. And bathers is not something that Cézanne himself invented. This was an existing genre. This was perhaps a legacy from Italian Renaissance paintings, and even prior with the classical paintings of the Greeks and the Romans. Again, Cézanne was painting within the framework of this kind of genre, and which does it mean that he was copying and following classical models in reproducing the same experience when it comes to bathers? Obviously, no. He was, adopting the pattern, the genre, but he was perhaps tweaking it to serve his own artistic purposes, to also suit his, his tone and his, style of painting. Remember, he was not, very traditional. So if he would adopt a genre, a traditional genre, he would not settle for whatever is conventional and traditional about it. He would tweak it so that it can serve his style and his tastes. Revolutionary and rebellious as he was. um, Again, we're stressing the fact that he did not invent the bathers as a genre. It has always been there, and it had such a long history in European painting. Um, Again, it had gone through stages of development and change. In the Italian Renaissance, for example, and during the late 15th and 16th century, most of the painting was biblical and about religion. Somehow, the bathers came as as influence from Greek and Roman models, and they would always compare the bathers, whoever are swimming in the painting, to the Roman goddess of beauty, Venus, or the Greek goddess of beauty, uh, um, Aphrodite or Aphrodite. Again, with the bathers, you normally have the goddess of love. You would have a collection of nudes imagined in an outdoor setting. And those nudes are normally nymphs. And nymphs are sea, uh, you know, um, fairies. And they are all taken from classical mythology, and they were given expression in the work of the Latin poet Ovid. And of course, Cézanne, like I said, he tried his hand with this genre, and this genre is obviously one of his favorites because a substantial part of his output and his productions were or was bathers. Again, if you compare Cézanne with his bathers with the classical models, whether they are Italian or even Greek, you would need to have you have to have a stand. You need to kind of adopt the traditional view or the modernist view. If you judge Cézanne against the traditional established guidelines, you would say that his bathers are not artistic at all and they lack everything artistic. But if you're a modernist and you have a modernist, way of looking at things, you would say that Cézanne was perhaps, reproducing bathers from a late 19th century and early 20th century perspectives, and the eyes are obviously different. Again, if you try to compare between Cézanne's bathers and traditional bathers, where the compositions of the earlier works present an open and measured passage from foreground into depth, allowing the absorbed spectator to imagine some interaction with their figures. The picture space of Cézanne's work seems dense and hard to read, while his nudes appear relatively lumpy and unconvincing. So, unconvincing to whom? Unconvincing and lumpy, of course, to traditionalists. Okay? But if you're modernist and if you're adopting modernist attitudes, you would perhaps give Cézanne another chance and would say that he was writing according to perhaps modern sensibilities. Again, time will change, and over time, whatever they um, criticized about Cézanne's bathers would be considered perhaps pluses because they will say that Cézanne was reflecting a different reality. It is true that the genre is very old, but perhaps he is, reproducing it from fresh perspectives. Again, some justification was given about Cézanne's bathers and how they looked and how different they are. Some, fans, some Cézanne fans would say that Cézanne's work, the bathers of Cézanne, are kind of a bridge between one era or age of art and the next. So he was a bridge between the two. So it is only natural that you see his bathers as a work in progress, if you like, where You don't normally have final assessment or final judgment because it is in progress. He's going to start something, and perhaps other people who will follow him, would complete his work. So you cannot entirely judge him because he and his colleagues were evolving as far as Vedas is concerned. He was a bridge, a figure of transition, if you like, between the traditionalists and the modernists. And in this case, they would refer to him as an avant-garde artist. An avant-garde artist is an artist who starts new things. It's more or less like the word pioneer. He was a pioneer. A pioneer is somebody who initiates things, who starts something new. And of course, when you start something new, people are so set in their old ways, they would accuse you of perhaps, flouting their traditions and violating and going beyond them, and of course, lots of people are kind of bound emotionally and socially to their traditions. So if you come and you try to change stuff, they would, kind of disapprove of you and perhaps accuse you of being a nonconformist, of being, um, you know, uh, out of their fold, if you like. So again, Cézanne in this sense would be an avant-gardist, somebody who is charting new territories, to the extent that one of the art critics is going to compare him to Christopher Columbus, and he's going to say that Cézanne is charting new grounds, exactly like Christopher Columbus. Okay, so these are some um, again, there is this focus on idea of clash between traditionalists and modernists. So, to those who viewed Cézanne's paintings with an eye to traditional standards of artistic skill and competence, they appeared simply worthless. Yet, for other people, they would say that he was, like I told you, I mean, a critic, an art critic like Cleve Bell would go as far as, considering Cézanne the Christopher Columbus of a new continent of form. The person who, insofar as one man can be said to inspire a whole age, inspires the contemporary movement. See? So, of course, to say that Cézanne was the first modern artist would be a little bit difficult because there were previous attempts, even before Cézanne. So, and you cannot simply say that one artist would be responsible for the huge change that we have seen. I mean, of course, there were other people, and he was part of them. Again, even if you can point one single person and you say that he is responsible for a cultural trend or a cultural change or artistic change, you would have to always remember that the climate of ideas has to be, favorable. You cannot be a game changer unless time allows you. And this is actually what Cézanne was having. The fact that the time was a time of revolution, social and political revolutions. So he started his own artistic revolution. Again, I said that we cannot really um, talk about paintings without really getting to know and familiarize ourselves with some of the terminology and the terms that they use in the field. The first word that you would be seeing in any book or in any article about or on paintings would be the idea of delineation. And delineation would mean the representation of shapes and details through drawing. And then you have the word modeling, and modeling would refer to the idea of representing figures and objects as three-dimensional. And then, of course, you know what shading means. And then the tone. Tone is obviously the range from lightest light, pure white, to darkest dark, pure black. I mean, whenever you have artists, they normally manipulate these different and the different lights so that they can have the effect that they intend. Um, as perhaps a tip in painting, the more that black is mixed with a given color, the darker its tone will be. An artist may exploit dramatic contrasts of tone or may use a relatively even range of tones. And this is typical where normally on a painting you see different tones and of course, I'm sorry, colors, and they are not there just for the sake of it. The contrast between and among the colors can perhaps give you the effect that the artist intends. And then composition, the surface of the painting, the brushwork. Okay, so these are all words that you're likely to either hear or read if you're dealing with paintings. And then we come back to the idea of tradition and modernity. And of course, tradition would mean classical models, would mean rigid guidelines set by the salon, and modernity would mean that you're trying to deviate from the established artistic norms. Why would you deviate from them? Because you think that they are rigid enough and or they are perhaps too rigid and they stifle you as an artist. You find yourself unable to recapture reality the way you want to capture it simply because of the the rules and the guidelines imposed on you as an artist. And we're going to talk about the conflict or the clash between tradition and modernity by featuring two people. We will have Cézanne representing modernity, and we will have an artist by the name, let me check what this guy is. His name is Bouguereau, I mean, excuse my French, of course. Bouguereau happens to be a traditionalist, while Cézanne would be considered a modernist. Okay, and of course the focus would be on two paintings, and the genre would be bathers. Again, bathers, and we'll see those who have looked at the two paintings, what they said about them. Again, um, um, according to these critics, we have three differences. The first one is in the delineation and modeling of the figures. We're talking about figures, right? With it is true that Bouguereau did not give his women an explicitly classical setting. They are clearly studied from models adopting conventional statues K poses. So he was more or less following conventional models. Again, there is proportion in his paintings. Again, if we're judging based on traditional notions of female beauty, and they are smoothly and gradually modeled. So again, as you can see with Bouguereau, you can feel this idea of smoothness, this idea of quietness, this idea of gradation and leveling. The fact that we don't have, as you can see, you don't have, nothing is shocking your sensibility into accepting or rejecting the thing. There is nothing revolutionary about what Bouguereau is presenting. The light in Bouguereau's bathers is directed into the picture from the left. Why? So that the right hand side of the figures is cast into a soft shade. So again, it's soft, it is explicit, it is conventional, it is proportional, so it's smooth. Okay, yeah. So you also have tonal, the idea of shades. Again, Bouguereau has this ability to mix different colors, black and white, into his colors to produce the graduations of tone that suggest rounded forms in an even light. So again, even, smooth, clear, explicit. Okay. If you look at Cézanne and his women, you will find that they are more robust. Robust means that I would say that they are more lifelike. They are also not molded in the classical way. Again, there is a great deal of motion about it. You feel that they were caught in motion. Again, if the other guy had those lights from the right, this time around you have Cézanne moving from the left, near left. Again, with Cézanne, Cézanne wants to tell you that this is not reality. I am recapturing reality, but this is not reality proper. Again, with classical paintings, you would immerse yourself in the painting and you feel that you're part of the painting. Whether this is good or bad, this is perhaps the subject of another day. The focus is on the fact that Cézanne is trying to break down or is trying to keep, I'm sorry, to keep the barriers between reality and the imagination. He wants you to be, he doesn't want you to go into a trance, imagining yourself part of the picture or the scene or the painting. He says, no, stop. You need to know that this is not reality. With Go, you don't have this. Uh, uh, um, you don't have separation between reality and the whatever is happening in the picture. Again, if we talk about reality and Cézanne not trying to or perhaps trying to break down, um, not trying to break down the barrier between reality and the imagination, you would find that reflected in the paintbrush, in how heavy handed the paint brushes are when it comes to Cézanne. Okay, so the second major difference would be the quality of the brush work and in the relations between figure and background that result. With Bourgeois, like we said, we have this smooth gradation. Um, Again, you have this blending between the different touches. Again, you have this empty space and you have the figures, perhaps in the front. Again, with Cézanne, you, like I said, you have those heavy-handed brush, touches, and you have lots of, brush touches to the extent that you feel that you have a mosaic, of colors. Again, the colors are, I mean, the figures are not, you think that they are composed of, touches. You also have a range of colors. You would feel that you have realistic figures. And this is perhaps one of the basic differences. The fact that with classical bathers, you would feel that you're part of a big mythology. You are a mythological figure yourself because the characters do not, look like human beings. They are figures in a big mythology or a big mythological book. Again, Cézanne is trying to bring you down to earth with his flesh and blood, women. Again, when it comes to women and how they are portrayed, um, with Bourgeois, the focus is on the women. That's why they are facing us in the painting. With Cézanne, he is perhaps more interested in other elements of nature to the extent that two of the women are giving us their backs. Um, so obviously, he's not. Other elements of nature are perhaps more important to him than those female figures. So how could you know whether they are giving you the feelings and the emotions that you're expecting? You don't have that because most of the women in Cézanne paintings are giving us their back. Um, um, do you guys have any questions?
No. No.
So, okay. Again, I would like us to make those comparisons ourselves. When we look at the pictures, perhaps we need to have um, a class that is entirely focused on applying and implementing these insights uh, in the paintings. Let me arrange that. Again, if we're talking about the time, and these are the observations that we made about Cézanne and about Bouguereau, I think uh, Cézanne would be considered, not a very high profile type of painter. Again, you would also have to perhaps take into account the fact that Cézanne was a significant departure from the type of work that was always done at the time. He was not a traditionalist. Somebody is having his or her mic on. Please mute your mic. Mute your mic, please. Somebody by the name of Sarah, mute your mic. Again, so what's happening with Cézanne? Is it, incompetence? Is it, is it the fact that he's not a good painter? Is it lack of talent and skill? Obviously, no. It's not about that. It's Cézanne's perhaps wanting to say that those paintings should be painted in with modern sensibilities and contemporary sensibilities in mind. He was not approving of the idea of going all the way back to Greek and Roman mythology for inspiration. Again, Cézanne was all against whatever is artificial, whatever is acquired. He would rather leave everything to nature. He would rather leave everything to talent. Um, Again, he would say that if I'm put in a comparison with other people and they happen to be traditionalists, whatever appreciation they get would normally be the effect of craftsmanship, and in this case, it is inartistic and common. Common means low quality. Again, you would also have to consider the idea of artistic quality. Who decides whatever is artistic, whatever is less artistic? This is a question that you also need to always think about. Again, it would depend on where you stand. Are you a traditionalist or a modernist? So modernists would defend Cézanne and would say that he is reflecting reality as it is, not as it should be. He believes that our modern and contemporary sensibilities would be more than enough for substance, for painting substance. Again, if you're traditionalist, so you would say that Cézanne lacks, the necessary techniques. He may be talented, but he would have to tweak his talent a little bit so that he can accommodate the existing guidelines of the age. Again, we move to another type of painting where there is also this controversy over whether Cézanne was a good painter or not. And it's the modern nude. Again, we're also looking at Bouguereau's paintings, and we're looking also at what he thinks when it comes to these paintings. Before I proceed, do you guys have any questions?
No.
Is it too much?
No, it's okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, should we?
Yes, too much
Let
light
me ask you this
from the
question.
novel.
Yes.
مغرب مو بنات.
Okay.
Too much.
Let me ask you this: would you go for an extra class where we complete? Or continue perhaps next time because it's perhaps heavy-handed or something. Would
Doctor,
you?
if we can in this half hour continue the class, so we will continue with you.
If what? What? Come again? Somebody was saying something.
Half an hour enough to end the chapter?
No, I don't think it would be enough.
So we need extra class. When
Yeah.
when it will be?
Okay, so today is what?
Today is Wednesday.
Today is Wednesday? Ah, yes, it is. Can we have it on, when is your second quiz? Is it Monday?
Yes, it's Monday,
Yes.
next Monday.
Can we have it?
2 quizzes at the same day. On Monday.
Okay, bravo, good. Can we have it on Saturday?
Also, I have quiz.
Saturday?
No, I have quiz. We have a quiz.
We have
I have
quiz, guys,
No.
but
On Saturday?
Yes, we all
depends
of
the time.
us have
Yes, doctor, we have you 214 quiz, inshallah, on Saturday.
On Saturday. Okay.
I have 2 quizzes.
MashaAllah.
Can we have it tomorrow? The extra class?
Yeah, can we have it tomorrow? Yes, can we have it tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow.
Yes, I
Yes.
think it's better to have
Yes,
it
tomorrow is
At
good.
what time? I already have a lesson.
أكيد مشكلة بقى
The
يعني.
more.
What's the problem? You can. So what time
At
would?
what time? At what time? After 3, it's
Tomorrow in
okay.
the morning.
I have a lesson from 12 to 2.
Okay, so we
9
can
or
have.
8.
We can
have
have.
it in noon. Yeah,
Yes.
it's better.
We can have it perhaps at 3 or at 4.
Yes.
Okay, no
Yeah,
problem.
it's okay.
What do you think? 3 or 4?
At 4.
First.
4. Okay, so 4 p.m. tomorrow.
Until
For 1 hour.
like
Inshallah.
1 hour.
It's good.
Yeah, it's not going to take more than 1 hour, inshallah.
Okay, then it's perfect.
Okay, thank you, doctor.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you.
I'll see you tomorrow, inshallah, at 4.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
I'll send you the link
Thank you,
because
doctor.
we have to
Thank you,
create
doctor.
another link. I'll send you the link tomorrow morning, inshallah.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you, doctor.
You're
Have a
welcome.
good day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye. Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام.
Thank you.